how do I say this? This is the golden question. Something I was very worried about before coming to Australia. Specifically peppers, and get over here. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Surina and I'm a junior doctor, and in my free time I like making these videos, so thank you so much for joining me. This thunderstorm's just come out of nowhere, so it is a lot darker than I was hoping for filming right now, so sorry about slightly mood lighting. But hopefully the candles are adding a little bit of ambience. Today I'm sitting down to finally film a Q&A with questions that I asked on my Instagram and my YouTube, and a lot of you asked a lot of questions, so it's time to finally sit down and answer them. It's gonna be pretty relaxed and pretty chatty, so grab yourself a drink if you are near one. I've got myself a hot chocolate, which, although it is extremely hot here in Brisbane, just feels right when it is grey and rainy outside. So grab yourself a drink and let's go. I've split the questions up into personal, medicine, surgery related, and by far the biggest category, Australia. So I'll answer them in that order. As always, use the timestamps in the description below to skip to whichever part you're interested in. Let's start with the personal questions, starting with as personal as they get. Are you single? No, I'm not. Somebody found it in their heart to take me in, for which I'll be forever confused but extremely grateful. Next is, where are you from? What state of India are you from? Where did you do your MBBS? So I get a lot of questions asking about where in India I am, and I can see why you'd think I'd be from India. But I was actually born in the UK and have lived there all of my life, until now obviously. My parents are from India, but they came to England quite a while ago, so I was born there. I studied there, I did my medical school degree there as well, in London. So yes, got a couple of people asking how old I am. I am 27. Yes, 27. No one asks you that question anymore after a certain age, and it also gets a lot less fun to answer. Okay, how will you and do you approach time management now and during surgical training? To be honest, I am very bad at time management. I kind of see my day as an endless pit that I can just keep adding things to. I don't have any concept of sacrifice and compromise. I think it comes hand in hand with the job I do. The hours are all over the place. Sometimes they're nights, evenings, days. You get random days off in the middle of the week. Sometimes you're working the weekend, sometimes you're not. So basically, there's no real routine that my job is able to impose on me, and therefore there's no real routine for my free time either. And yeah, I just keep cramming and cramming things. That's probably one of the things I struggle the most with. Having said that, there are a lot of things I do and manage to do, so I guess top tips would be to prioritize. There is no point having a huge long list of things you want to do that you aren't going to possibly achieve in one day. Someone told me a good tip, which was to write down just one thing that you have to have achieved by the end of the day and just focus on that. That works really well with my personality type. So I try, if I've got a long list of things to do, to just extract the most important, so at least when that's done, I can feel a bit of peace. Wow, it is really, really chucking it down out there. Next couple of linked questions are, how is your work-life balance? Pretty good, I'd say. Medicine is the kind of career that can take up as much of your life as you wish it to. There is obviously a baseline, if you're working full-time, that this is how many hours it will take up. But then you can get more stuck in, you can do more shifts, you can pick up more research, more teaching opportunities. As a result, medicine as a whole can consume more of your life. At this stage in my life, I'm not really interested in any of that, especially being in Australia. So I just kind of go to work, do my hours and come back. And I'm using all my free time for other things right now. That might shift later, but right now the balance is very much tipped towards the life side. Leading on from that, someone has asked, what do you do in your free time? I feel like it is at this point that every person forgets anything they've ever done. Well, I mean, I guess I do this. Having a YouTube channel takes up a lot of time that I didn't realise, and I absolutely love it, but it is very, very time consuming. In Australia, of course, travelling is a massive part of my life, and even before pre-pandemic, travelling was where I like to spend my time and my money and my energy, so that has all come back with a lot of enthusiasm now that I'm in Australia. What else? Exercise is a very big part of my life. I like to try and stay active in some form or another. And then just the usual things, I guess, reading, cooking, meeting friends, and all that good stuff, really. Next is the medicine and surgery section. So we have a question here. My daughter, having chosen her options for GCSEs, is looking to pursue something along the medicine route. What does the overall route to becoming a doctor look like from my point of view, and what are the resources I need to prepare myself to support her with? And we've got another question saying, what advice would you give to a 14-year-old girl looking to study medicine? I'd say there's probably 3 categories you need to pay attention to get into medical school. One being your grades. Identify a few universities you're interested in, either because of their course or their location, and really focus in on what exactly they want from you. They often want specific GCSE results as well as specific A-level or IB results. So you need to start that journey in terms of getting your grades quite early on, even before you've sat your GCSEs. Other 2 categories are more vocational. To get into most medical schools, you need to write a personal statement and then often do an interview as well. In both the statement and the interview, you need to show that you understand what being a doctor is all about. And 2 things that they specifically look for are work experience and volunteering. Work experience I would try and sort out as soon as possible. It can take a while with all the paperwork and forms, etc. You can contact hospitals directly, or an easier way is to just find a friend of a friend or someone who knows someone who works in a hospital, because that will often be quicker. You can pair up with other people who are interested in medicine, or ask people who have recently gotten into medical school and try and find some contacts that way. I think that'll be a lot quicker. Volunteering wise, I would go for volunteering roles that are in a sort of caring capacity, looking after elderly people in a care home, or perhaps younger children like I did when I volunteered for summer camps that were for children with additional special needs. After you've done those 2 things, you need to be able to reflect on them and say what you've learnt about the career as a doctor in both your statement and your interview. Next question is, would medicine be possible with kids looking to do graduate medicine, but they will be 5 and 7 when I look at wanting to start? I'm worried it will be so intense and I'll miss their whole childhood. Whoa, I cannot advise on parenting at all. In terms of what to expect at medical school, I can share a few of my experiences. Essentially, the way my course was organised was preclinical and then clinical. So for 2 or 3 years, it was mainly lecture-based, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. We were pretty busy in lectures or in the anatomy lab, and then we had exams at the end of every year. It was pretty full on in terms of the timetable because you were pretty much busy for the whole week. Having said that, we somehow found time to socialise and go out all the time and do all that fun uni freshers stuff. So clearly there was a lot of extra free time as well, which I'm sure you can spend doing something far more productive like parenting. And then the clinical years I found were a lot more independent and on your own terms. There were specific teaching sessions that you had to be on and that you were expected to attend, but the actual placements themselves, I found that you could pick and choose what you'd find useful, where you thought would be a good learning opportunity, and then you could also step back at times and use that time for private study. Medical school is definitely full on, not only the study, but then also the exams you have to revise for at the end of the year or regularly throughout the year, depending on how your course is run. But I'm sure it's not impossible. I'm sure people have done it. And with a good support system, I don't see why it can't be possible. Next question is, would you recommend studying medicine in the UK? Yeah. I mean, I've got nowhere to compare it with, but I am pretty happy with the university I went to, the course I studied. I felt pretty ready to become a doctor by the end, which I guess is a good marker of how good you thought your degree was. So I can't complain. Any tips for final year medics soon to be starting work? Yes, take your breaks. Do not expect anyone to tell you when to take your break. You have to be in charge of that. Do not regularly stay late. Make sure you're handing things over. Make sure you're using the handover system the way it's meant to be used. I would say to take regular annual leave throughout your year, not only time off to go on holidays and do things, but also odd days off, odd long weekends off here and there, just to reset and recharge. And always, always make friends with the doctor who loves to bake. How many more years do you have to work as a junior doctor to become a surgeon? In the UK, after graduating, you do 2 years of your foundation job. Then you do 2 years of core surgical training where you rotate through different surgical specialities. Then you start your specialty training, which is something like 8 years or so, and then you become a consultant. So that is around 12-ish years if you go straight from university to becoming a consultant. But that's obviously if you take no years out, no career breaks, and assuming that you get a job at every stage of applications and don't have to wait another year to reapply or whatever. Next section, and definitely the biggest section by far, are the questions about Australia. I've kind of split them into pre, during, and post. The pre-questions are pretty much all the same. How did you apply for an FY3 in Australia? Can you tell us how you got a job in Australia? How did you apply for a job in Australia? Someone also asked how I am, and then asked how to get a job in Australia. Firstly, I'm pretty good at the moment, thank you for asking. And secondly, there is a video up to answer all of your questions of how to get to Australia, or at least how I got to Australia, and that video should be up on my channel now. I will link it up somewhere on the screen now. If you can't be bothered or just don't want to watch it right now, in a quick nutshell, step 1, reach out to lots of hospitals and ask them for a job. Step 2, fill out all the paperwork they ask. Step 3, apply for your visa and all that stuff. And then step 4, book your flights, tell the UK you're leaving, and get over here. Last category of questions are all about asking about my time here now that I'm here. So someone has said, how is Australian life compared to UK life? What is the quality of life like in Brisbane versus London? What is the standard of living? Which is cheaper? General UK versus Australia observations. I think I will do a more detailed video about this. So Australia is a massive country, and I've only lived in Brisbane. And in England, I only really lived in London for most of my life. So it'll be more of a Brisbane versus London comparison rather than comparing the whole countries. Brisbane, Queensland is a lot hotter. Really enjoyed the summery, sunny days out here. Although there has been a lot of rain that no one told me about. We've had flooding, the river overflowing, getting absolutely drenched whilst out and about hiking and things. So that was unexpected, but nonetheless, the warmth and all the sunny days in between have been such a nice change. Standard of living seems pretty similar to living in the UK. I will say that Brisbane specifically is a lot cheaper than London. I know other cities like Sydney and Melbourne are quite comparable to London, but Brisbane cost of living is definitely cheaper in terms of rent and public transport. And of course, I'm earning a bit more out here as well, so it generally feels like I've got a bit more disposable income. One thing that is definitely more expensive, which I didn't expect, are groceries. Fresh fruit and vegetables seem a lot more expensive here. Although they seem a lot more locally sourced, they are still super expensive. Specifically, peppers shook me the most. I think there's been a lot of development in Brisbane recently, or so I'm told, to make it a bit more of a exciting city, I guess, to compete with places like Sydney and Melbourne. They've got loads and loads of really nice cafes, restaurants, bars. They've got a really nice, obviously, riverside, and it just is like a very livable city, and I'm really enjoying living here. Someone has asked about the pros and cons of living in Brisbane, and someone has said, what surprised you positively and negatively on your move to Bris Vegas? I guess most surprising negative was the rain. Everyone has said it is not usual for it to rain so much in the summer, and I think it happens like every few years or something. We've experienced really extreme rainfall leading to flooding, like I mentioned, so that's probably the most negative thing, but not really Brisbane's fault. Most positive thing, I guess, would be the living cost. And actually, I'd never been to Brisbane before. I'd been to Sydney and Melbourne on holiday, but came to Brisbane quite blindly. And I've just been really positively surprised by what a livable city it is, and also how close it is to so many beautiful parts of Queensland. Lots of mountain ranges, beaches, reefs, places you can do, like day trips or quick weekend trips to. So really enjoyed that part of living here as well. Have you encountered animals like spiders and snakes so far? Very legitimate question, something I was very worried about before coming to Australia. I'm terrified of both. Yes, I have seen them. Don't really get them in the city, thank God, but definitely more in the wilder areas when we're going hiking or bushwalking, as they call it in Australia. We have encountered some snakes, usually quite small, and usually they get as far away from you as possible once they hear you coming. So we've just kind of seen them slither away or seen them on the sides. Did see one very big brown snake very early on when we got here, but again, it kind of wasn't really in the path, it was minding its own business. Similarly with spiders, I've not seen any massive, dangerous, poisonous ones yet. Seen obviously some spiders when we're out and about camping and things. Again, they've never really been close to me, you know, in my tent or anything scary like that. They've just kind of been doing their own thing in nature, not very bothered by us. But yeah, I still run a mile if I see one anywhere near me. A couple of hospital specific questions here. So UK versus Australia hospital lifestyle. So the day-to-day hospital lifestyle is pretty much the same. You go in, you're either on a ward or you're in ED, managing patients, just doctoring, the same as back home. I'd say the attitudes and atmosphere is slightly different at times. There seems to be a lot more of a hustle culture kind of vibe here, and I think that stems from the way training works here, which is a points-based system to get onto training, be that surgical or medical or whatever. You need to have your portfolio with your points. But unlike the UK, a lot of the points come from references from your consultants and your seniors. So you do have to kind of make a good impression. It is a little bit more about who you know that will dictate what kind of job you get. So I feel like there is a bit of an atmosphere of, how do I say this, sucking up to the seniors a little bit. And I totally understand why, it is just the way the system works, but there is a little bit of, you know, staying late because your consultant might need you, or coming in early to make sure you've got everything prepared before your team comes in. And I'm not really a big fan of that, and that was quite a surprise. I wasn't expecting that when I came here. But yeah, I totally understand why it is the way it is. Leading on from that, someone has asked, is surgical residency tougher in the UK versus Australia? I think the training itself is largely the same. You've got to, you know, progress through the years, get certain competencies, and be more independent the more senior you get. But getting onto the training program, I think, is a little bit harder here because of the degree of nepotism that still exists. But I don't know too much about that from first-hand experience, as I'm not training here. Next category of questions is all about coming back. So how long do you think you'll stay in Australia? Do you see yourself sticking around for training? Will you be coming back to the UK to continue your training? This is the golden question. I honestly don't know right now. I think my head tells me that it makes total sense to stay here. It is a pretty good quality of life. It is much better pay. Living in Australia is a lot of fun. There is so much to do and see within one country, and of course having neighbours like New Zealand and I guess even the Pacific Islands, it's a really nice part of the world to be in. But my heart doesn't quite feel at home here, even after 6 or 7 months. All my friends and family are obviously in the UK, and I'm already missing birthdays and baby showers and weddings and all of those things you just can't really replace. So it's tough, and I think someone anticipating that answer said, if all of your friends and family moved to Australia to be near you, would you still want to come back to the UK and the NHS? If so, why? If all my friends and family moved here and then I moved back to the UK, I would be actively running away from all my loved ones. So don't think I could get away with that. But to answer your question a bit more seriously, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer. I probably would stay here. I don't know if I'd necessarily stay in Brisbane, Queensland specifically, but staying in Australia seems like a pretty good deal, and the training here seems very good quality. But for now, I'm not too sure. That is a big question to figure out in the foreseeable future. Alright, that is everything. Thank you so much for watching and for sending in your questions. To keep following my journey here in Australia, make sure you subscribe to the channel, leave this video a like, and of course drop any comments below, and I'll be happy to answer more questions. And I'll see you next time. Bye!